Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasa Tato Jayamudhirayet. So, Englisch oder Deutsch? Deutsch. Alle sprechen Deutsch? Ja, ne? Deutsch. In der Küche sprechen wir aber Englisch. Aber nicht alle sprechen Englisch. Hier oben. Alena, kannst du übersetzen für Kishorikund? Dann würde ich auf Englisch sprechen, damit die Devotees in der Küche auch mitverfolgen können. So, we're reading from the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 7, Text 29. 29? Please repeat. Rudra Vacha Tavam Varadam Varangro Ashishe Hankilar. We will split it. Ashishe Ham Akilam Arte Him Api Munibhir Asaktair Adarena Arhaniye Yadi Rachitam Dhiyam Ma Vidya loko apavidham japati na ganaye tat tvat paranugrahena Rudravacha Tava Varada Varango Ashi. Nein, nicht so schnell. Also, ich weiß nicht, wie ist es aufgeteilt da? Ja, bis T. Tava Varada Varango Ashishe Har Kilarte. Yapi Muni Virasaktir Asaktir Adhare Nahaniye Yadira Chitta Diyamadiya Lokopavidham Japati Naganaye Tattvam Paranugrahena Japati Naganaye Tattvam Paranugrahena. The U has to be a little bit longer. So one more time. Rudravacha Tava Varada Varangro Ashishe Hakala Tava Varada Varangoro Ashishe Hakilarte Yapi Muni Virasaktar Adhare Naharniye Yadira Chitta Diyama Vidyalokopavidham Japati Naganayitvatvam Paranugrahena. Paranu. U is always long, so Paranugrahena. Then it works. One more time. Rudravacha Tava Varada Varango Ashishe Hakalat La Akilarte Yapi Muni Virasaktar Adhare Nanarhiye Yadira Chitta Diyama Vidyalokopavidham Japati Nagana Yitvatvam Paranugrahena. So please try. Now we would need Kanai Krishna Prabhu to guide us. But he's not here, unfortunately. Rudra Vacha Ladies? Traut sich keiner? Bisschen schwer. So word by word. Rudra Uvacha. Lord Shiva said, Tava your Varadha, O Supreme Benefactor, Vara Angraho, precious lotus feet, Ashisha, by desire, Iha, in the material world, Akila Arte, for fulfillment, Hiapi, certainly, Munibihi, by the sages, Asaktaihi, liberated, Adharena, with care, Arhaniye, worshipable, Yadi, if, Rachita Dhyam, mind fixed, Ma, me, Avidyalokaha, the ignorant persons, Apavidham, unpurified activity, Japati, utters, Naganaye, do not value, Tat, it, Tvat paranugrahena, by compassion like yours. Translation on purpose by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai. Lord Shiva said, my dear Lord, my mind and consciousness are always fixed on your lotus feet, which, as the source of all benediction and the fulfillment of all desires, are worshipped by all liberated great sages, because your lotus feet are worthy of worship. With my mind fixed on your lotus feet, I am no longer disturbed by persons who blaspheme me, claiming that my activities are not purified. I do not mind their accusations, and I excuse them out of compassion, just as you exhibit compassion towards all living entities. Purport. Lord Shiva expresses herein his regret at having been angry and having disturbed the sacrificial activities of Daksha. King Daksha had insulted him in many ways, and thus he had become angry and had frustrated the entire sacrificial ceremony. Later, when he was pleased, the yajna performance were reinstituted, and therefore he regretted his activities. Now he says that because his mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Vishnu, he is no longer disturbed by the ordinary critics of his way of life. From this statement by Lord Shiva, it is understood that as long as one is on the material platform, one is affected by the three modes of material nature. As soon as one is in Krishna consciousness, however, one is no longer affected by such material activities. One should therefore always be fixed in Krishna consciousness, busy in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. It is guaranteed that such a devotee will never be affected by the actions and reactions of the three modes of material nature. This fact is also corroborated in the Bhagavad Gita. Anyone who is fixed in the transcendental service of the Lord has surpassed all the material qualities and is situated in the status of Brahman realization, in which one is not afflicted by hankering for material objects. The recommendation of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is that one should always be Krishna conscious and should never forget his transcendental relationship with the Lord. This program has to be followed strictly by everyone. From the statement of Lord Shiva, it is understood that he was always in Krishna consciousness, and thus he remained free from material affliction. The only remedy, therefore, is to continue Krishna consciousness rigidly, in order to get out of the contamination of the material modes. Om Ajnanati Mirandasya Gyanangyana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Sriyuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Namo Prabhupada Priyarasaya Jagannatha Yatrananda Murtaye Bhakta Sukaya Krishnodkirtanena Nrsinghena Rakshataya Namaha Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyade Shatarine Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaivacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhaktashaktikam Sankarshana Karanato Yashai Garbhodashai Chapayobdishai Sheshascha Kala Sanityanandakya Sharanam Mamastu Namo Mahavaranjaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namni Gora Tuse Namaha Namaste Halagraha Namaste Mushalayuda Namaste Rivatikanta, Namaste Bhaktavatsala, Namaste Dharanidhara, Namaste Balaram Shishta, Pralambare, Namaste Stve Himam Krishna Purvaja, He Krishna Karuna Sindhu, Dinabandho Jagatpate, Gopesha Gopivakanta, Radhakanta, Namostute, Jayatam Surato Pangor, Mamamanda, Matergati, Matsarvasva Padamvajo, Radhamadana Mohano, Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadrumada Shrimadradangara Simhasanasto Śrīmad Radha Srila Govinda Deva Uprishthalivi Savimana Smarami Śrīmanra Sarasaram Bhivam Sivata Tatastitaha Karsham Veno Svanar Gopir Gopinata Shri Estunaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Garadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So read the verse again. Rudra Vacha Tava Varada. No, only me. Rudra Vacha Tava Varada Varangro Ashishe Kakilarte Hiapi Munibira Saktir Adare Nadarhanye Yadira Chitta Dhyam Ma Vidyalokopavidham Japatina Gane Kanaye Tattvam Tatvat Paranugrahena. Okay, and the translation. Lord Shiva said, My dear Lord, my mind and consciousness are always fixed on your lotus feet, which are the source of all benediction and the fulfillment of all desires, are worshipped by all liberated great sages because your lotus feet are worthy of worship. With my mind fixed on your lotus feet, I am no longer disturbed by persons who blaspheme me, claiming that my activities are not purified. I do not mind their accusations, and I excuse them out of compassion, just as you exhibit compassion toward all living entities. So, we are reaching the conclusion of this section of the Bhagavatam, where the sacrifice of Daksha is described. The offenses Daksha made towards Lord Shiva are described. The relationship between Sati and Shiva were also described. And finally, also the destruction of the fire sacrifice of Daksha was described. And now here, Daksha getting blessings. First Brahma visiting Kailash and pacifying Lord Shiva. And now Shiva taking part in the new ceremony of Daksha. Daksha with his new look, with a goat head, offering prayers to Lord Shiva, and now Lord Shiva is here responding. And of course, for us as Vaishnavas, this is a very important verse, because here Lord Shiva is identified by Srila Prabhupada as a Vaishnava. And it's obvious because Lord Shiva is praying himself to Lord Vishnu. Sometimes you will see in Vrindavan or in Ramayana that Vishnu or Rama or Krishna, actually specifically Krishna or Rama, might worship Shiva actually. And then sometimes this can be could be misconstrued to mean that Shiva is supreme. It's a very intimate relationship, and in one sense Shiva and Vishnu are one and the same, just in a different manifestation. But still, it's inconceivable for our conditioned minds. Each individual form of the Lord is an individual person still. And a very interesting example that I always like very much is about two very famous deities in South India. There is Varada Krishna, Varadaraj, which is in Kanchipuram, and that's where Ramanujacharya grew up. So Ramanujacharya was living in Kanchipuram, was worshipping Varadaraj regularly. Very beautiful temple, deity is still there. And at one point it became clear that Ramanujacharya's duty would be to go and take over the to take over the position of an acharya from Yamunacharya in Srirangam, which is maybe a few hours by car nowadays, a few hundred kilometers apart. And when the situation came that Ramanujacharya should go and leave Varadaraj and go to Ranganatha Swami, to Srirangam, the two deities they had a fight. It's like, no, I want, Varadaraj said, no, Ramanujacharya cannot go. Ramanujacharya has to stay here, I don't want him to go, And then Srirangam, Ranganatha Swami in Srirangam, he said, no, he has to take over the position of an acharya here now. He has to come here. He has a duty to fulfill here. So technically you could say this is both Vishnu, They're both different forms of Vishnu. So how is it that they're quarreling among each other for one person? And that's because each form of the Lord is individual still. The Lord has Ananta Rupam, and he has this capacity to each expansion of the Lord, each deity of the Lord is an individual person, complete and full, but still an individual person. So that's very interesting. And therefore, these two deities, both wanted to have Ramanuja Acharya, with them. And at the end, the solution of this dilemma was that Ramanujacharya, as actually Ramanujacharya is an incarnation of Anantashesha, it said, he was able to expand himself in two forms. So one Ramanujacharya remained in Kanchipuram, hidden, but he remained there, and one Ramanujacharya went to Srirangam to take the position of the acharya. So yes, so this is very interesting. So in a similar way, Lord Shiva, and this is very important because the Mayavadi philosophy is trying to promote the idea that everything is one. Everything is one, and even to the level that each one of you, we're all God ultimately. And just recently I saw a video clip of a young Christian YouTuber, and he read the Bhagavad Gita, and he was commenting on the Bhagavad Gita. And unfortunately the Gita that he had was an impersonal Bhagavad Gita. So in the impersonal Bhagavad Gita, when the interpretation is impersonal, then very easily the impression can arise that actually there is no compassion. Because then the interpretation, the perception is that the Bhagavad Gita is there's no compassion. No? You have to just follow Dharma and fight. You should not follow any of your senses, any of your emotions, any of your desires. You have to just kill it all, and just transcend. Why? Because you are Brahman, and you should become one with transcendence. That's it. So the Bhagavad Gita actually loses completely the whole dimension of compassion when it's interpreted in an impersonal way. It was very clear because he was a sincere Christian YouTuber, I would say, and he was just reading this Bhagavad Gita. But interestingly, many devotees saw this video, so many devotees were commenting, "Read Bhagavad Gita as it is." Then you get the real idea of Bhagavad Gita. Because the moment we become personal, we understand that of course it is very important to be detached, to be above the senses, to control the mind, but we don't want to kill the mind. We don't want to kill the senses. We want to engage all the senses in the service of Rishikesha, the master of the senses. This is the real solution. This is the real liberation. And just for the record, cracking nuts in a lecture, usually not a good idea. But I don't mind because we are on a farm and we need to crack our nuts. And there's many more outside also we need to collect for next year. These are from last year. But in regular, if there's like some guest or a spiritual master, don't crack nuts in the lecture. Probably they will not like it. But you can continue. You können ruhig weitermachen. So when there is an impersonal interpretation, everything becomes very, you could also say it loses depth. It loses depth. Everything becomes very plain and superficial. Similar to the encounter of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya in Jagannath Puri, where Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was explaining, I forgot how many days, many days, the Vedanta Sutras to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was hearing very patiently, without uttering a word, without even moving or blinking, And little by little, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was becoming very irritated. It's like, is he even hearing? Is he even understanding what's going on? Is even like, is it sipping in what I'm saying? So after so many days, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya finally had to say something like, "Do you even understand what I'm saying? Do you even understand the Vedanta Sutra?" And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu famously replied, "The Vedanta Sutra is clear like the sun, but your explanations are like clouds." So the impersonal explanations cover up, the depth of rasa, tattva, of personal relationships, and especially the aspect of compassion, becomes invisible or lost, because it might seem that the Bhagavad Gita is promoting being, completely ruthless. You just kill your family. It's your duty. They not have a body. Who cares? They will be born again. Brutal. So, but if you understand the spiritual dimension, then it's very, very different. Then it's very different. You understand that Bhishmadeva is a great devotee of the Lord. Arjuna is a great devotee, and they have a relationship. And you read all about the relationship this great devotees have. And then it all becomes much more a lila, a pastime, and a great, you could say, even catastrophic, a great, you could say, endeavor or mission, being executed, to enliven Mother Earth, who's also devotee, Bhumi Devi. to enliven her from the hordes of unscrupulous warriors. It's described. That's the reason why Krishna appeared. Bhumi Devi was praying to Lord Krishna, please, appear and please enliven me of all these great armies that are marching on my surface. Many powerful armies. So the whole purpose of the appearance of Krishna was to reduce and to destroy all of these armies. In one description I read, Prabhupada describes that if those armies would have remained, in Kali Yuga, it would have been very dangerous. Because very powerful warriors, under the influence of Kali Yuga, it would have meant huge destruction. It anyway happened. Anyway, so many battles always occur. In history, in Europe, at least in Central Europe, we cannot say for all of Europe because there's still a war going on in a few parts of Europe now. But in Central Europe, the last 70 years have been the most peaceful in so many centuries. Before this area where we are, in Central Europe, Germany, constantly one war after the other, bigger or smaller. So wars are always there, but imagine all of these wars with all these powerful Kshatriyas still around. It would have been very terrible. So they had to be, eradicated. But especially the point that Srila Prabhupada always emphasizes so much is that when two businessmen meet, they probably will not talk about the environment. And when two communists meet, they probably will not talk about capitalism and how to make money, and the way around. So Prabhupada says, when the Bhakta and the Lord meet and talk, it is about bhakti. So the topic of the Bhagavad Gita is bhakti because it's a dialogue between Krishna and his best friend, his devotee, Arjuna. So the moment we perceive the Gita in this light, it gains a completely different depth. Then just by appreciating that relationship, one can attain liberation and great perfection. This famous story, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met this Brahmana who couldn't read. Still, the instruction this Brahmana had received from his spiritual master was to read the Bhagavad Gita. But because he couldn't read, he was holding it upside down or wrong. He had no idea. He couldn't read. So everybody was making fun of him. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu noticed that this Brahmana was crying tears of ecstasy, of great spiritual joy. So he asked him, what are you doing? And of course, maybe part of it was because he felt humble and he was, as far as I understand, he felt, incapable to properly follow the instruction of his guru. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was digging deeper, and then he found out that he was crying because he's like the main realization he had from holding Bhagavad Gita in his hands was he understood the fact that Krishna, even as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was willing to become the charioteer of his devotee. So the charioteer is a lower position than the Kshatriya. I forgot the name, but for example, Radeya or Karna was raised by charioteer parents, and that's why he was considered to be less or lower, than the Kshatriyas. So Krishna took that position, and why is it, like you could say, a lower position? Because the Kshatriya standing on the chariot kicks with his foot left and right, on the back of the chariot of the charioteer, to direct him where to go. That's how it works. So, but Krishna was willing. Krishna was very happy to take that position. Krishna, in so many circumstances, loves to become dependent on his devotee. If the devotee is qualified, Krishna will become dependent on his devotee. And the best example, of course, we are currently celebrating Damodar Mass, and we have Yashoda Mai and Krishna. And Krishna is fully dependent on Mother Yashoda. In this pastime, it is explained that Krishna was hiding at one point after stealing butter. And when he was hiding, he was still crying. So the acharyas comment that because Krishna was still crying while he was hiding, that means that Krishna was completely absorbed in that relationship with Yashoda Mai. He did not think, I am God, I'm just playing a pastime, I'm going to hide, and then when he's hiding, he's like, okay, I can stop pretending now to cry, No, Krishna was really afraid of Mother Yashoda. Krishna was completely dependent on Mother Yashoda, like a child. And Krishna, of course, only would put himself in such a position if the purity of the devotee is accordingly, elevated. So all of this is missed if you perceive the Bhagavad Gita only from an impersonal lens. And also the differentiation of between different aspects of Krishna. Krishna appears in so many different aspects. Krishna is Braja Mohan in Vrindavan. Krishna is Mathurapati, he lives in Mathura. Krishna is Dwarkadish, as a prince in Dwarka. And all of these are very different aspects of Krishna. Technically you could say all the same, but at the same time very unique. So we hear very often that Krishna, for example, never leaves Vrindavan. Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. So what does it mean? There's a whole chapter how Krishna is leaving Vrindavan, and all the gopis are staying back, and they're very devastated. They're trying to prevent the chariot from going. They're cursing Akrura, for taking Krishna away from Vrindavan. But in Tattva, Krishna, Braja Mohan, never leaves Vrindavan. When Krishna leaves Vrindavan, it's Vasudev Krishna that leaves Vrindavan. It's a different aspect of Krishna. So in Mathura, already, the Krishna who is in Mathura is not the same Krishna as in Vrindavan. So, and in Mathura, Govinda Maharaj explains that Mathura is a mixture. In Mathura, sweetness and Aishvarya are combined. So Mathura is a very unique place where sweetness, the sweetness of Braja is still there to some extent, and the Aishvarya, the opulence, of a kingdom, of a city, of an urban opulence is also there. While Vrindavan is completely natural. It's the village, cows, completely pure. And the city is always a little bit more in the mode of passion. So, but of course this is a spiritual city, a transcendental place. In Mathura, these two components mix. So Mathurapati is different again from Dwarkadish. So after Mathura is attacked many times by who was it? Jarasandha. I forgot how many times, but again and again Jarasandha tried, and Krishna every time defeated him. At one point Krishna decided to build a new city, in the ocean, an island with a big bridge, bridging to the mainland. So Dwarka, in Dwarka, Krishna is perceived by all the residents of Dwarka as the super soul. Everybody in Dwarka understands Krishna is the super soul, and they see him as their protector. Whereas in Mathura, they see him as a young boy, a young prince. And in Mathura, Krishna is still going to Gurukul in the beginning. So it's different. And then, of course, you can go even further. Then after Dwarka, there is Ayodhya. So then in Dwarka, Krishna is the most famous citizen of the city, but he bears no, you could say, legal responsibility. He's not the king. The king is Ugrasena, and he's the most prominent person in the city. He's, he has 16,000 palaces. So he's obviously, you could say, the boss. But he doesn't take a responsibility of being the king, actually. So that's very interesting. That puts him in a different position. So he has no responsibility, and in that sense, also no duty in that sense. Whereas Rama is Maryadama Purushottama. Krishna is Lila Purushottama. Krishna is manifesting huge opulence in all his pastimes, extremely extravagant and, boundless. There's no limitations, in the pastimes of Krishna. Whereas in the pastimes of Lord Ram is giving an example of how to follow Dharma, and that can be very tough. You have to make tough decisions. And no decision is perfect. Similar to the decision of Arjuna, who wanted to kill Ashwatthama, but at the same time did not want to kill a Brahmana. So how do you do that? You have to kill him because he deserves it. He killed innocent children and sleeping. So certainly anybody who does that deserves death. At the same time, even he was a Brahma Bandhu, he did not deserve harsh treatment. So Arjuna found a way to dishonor him. Cut his hair, remove his jewel, and that way he, for a Kshatriya to lose his honor is worse than dying actually. So that way they killed him and they didn't kill him at the same time. So that's always the difficulty for a Kshatriya to make the right decisions. Now I lost my point where I was going. Can somebody help me? What was I saying before? Yeah, Rama. Maryadama Purushottama. Ram. So Ram also had to take very difficult decisions. And Ram, the main, you could say, even it's very painful and might seem sometimes even inhumane, the lesson we can learn from Ram is that he was willing to sacrifice his personal enjoyment for Dharma. So he never took, sometimes he would say like, okay, I have a wife and a family, but at the same time he was a king, So in that position, Raja Dharma, his dharma and his duty towards all his citizens was greater and more important than his duty towards his own family. So he put it above. So he banished even Sita, which is very painful and difficult to understand. But we can understand is that he was willing always, at all times, he would always put the highest dharma and would never compromise it, for his personal comfort, or would never try to interpret dharma in such a way that it would be convenient for him. Always the most straightforward, direct application of dharma. There's a very interesting episode in the Ramayana. After Rama left for exile, he's in the Dandakaranya forest, or maybe a different forest, I forgot now. And Bharata and Shatrughna return from visiting their relatives and hear from Kaikeyi what they have done. And Bharata is shocked. He doesn't like the idea at all. He doesn't approve of the plans of his mother and Mantara to make him the king. He has no desire to take the king from his elder brother. So he immediately takes the whole army, all the residents of Ayodhya, and he says, we'll go to the forest and bring Ram back. So all the residents of Ayodhya, everybody, goes to the forest to bring Rama back. And Lakshman is not so sure what's happening. So because they see, the emblem of Ayodhya, the big elephant with the white chhatri umbrella, and this is the royal symbols, of the king of Ayodhya. So Lakshmana thinks, this Bharata, now he's coming to kill us to make sure he has no challenge to his reign. And Ram says, no, that's not their motivation. Don't worry. So, and it's one of the most interesting parts of Ramayana, because in the version I read was relatively summarized, but in the original Ramayana, all the citizens of Ayodhya, the Shudras, the Vaishyas, the Kshatriyas, the Brahmanas, all his family members, everybody is bringing arguments to Ram why he should return. everybody, And Ram says, no. It was my father gave a promise, and this promise, was taken by my mother, Kaikeyi, and I have to fulfill it, I'm not going to take the shortcut. Even everybody said, no, you don't have to, And the Brahmanas were quoting Shastra and exceptions to the rule and everything. Logicians, everybody was trying to convince Ram. Nobody could convince Ram, And then at the end, Kaikeyi herself, she came also and she said, Ram, I'm really sorry, I really, I was I don't know how and why I became so envious, it was a mistake, I didn't really want this, Please, don't take this promise that I took from your father so seriously. Please come back, Ram. And only then Ram revealed to Kaikeyi, this is a lila. I have a pastime. I have a pastime to perform. I have a duty to perform also to destroy Ravana. But for everybody else, he argued from the point of view of Dharma, and nobody could convince him. So usually, if so many people try to convince you to not fulfill some harsh duty, you would be very glad. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, true. Maybe I shouldn't fast. I'm a little bit sick. Why should I fast? Everybody's saying I should not fast. It's bad for my health. And so on and so forth. So we would usually welcome, such compassion, towards us. But Rama would have none of it. He'd never wavered. Once he had taken a decision, he followed through completely with it. So Ram is Maryadama Purushottama, and he's the king. He's fully in responsibility. Whereas Krishna in Dwarka is not in responsibility. And then of course we have the Chaturvyuha, Shankarshana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, Vasudeva. Then we have all the Narayana forms in Vaikuntha, so many different forms of Narayan, with unlimited names, so many planets, each planet being controlled by one form of Narayan. And then in the material world we have Mahavishnu, first as the first form of the Lord within the material world. And then we have Kshirodakashaya Vishnu, and then we have Antaryami, the super soul. And all of these are different aspects of the Lord. So, and the point I'm still trying to make is that all of these forms are individual. So in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, there's a very interesting story where a Brahmana is complaining that his child has died prematurely. And then Krishna and Arjuna go and meet Mahavishnu. So, and Krishna is talking to Mahavishnu. So you could say it's the same person, but it's not the same person. It is the same tattva, but very different aspects. So Dwarkadish Krishna goes and meets Mahavishnu. So that is absolutely possible. And in the same way here we have Lord Shiva, who is one aspect of Krishna, very unique tattva, Shiva tattva, offering prayers to the Lord. So it's not all the same. It's not all one. There is a lot of, very, you could say, nuanced relationships taking place between all these different, incarnations of the Lord, forms of the Lord, manifestations of the Lord. When the Lord does this, it's lila. When we do that, in the material world, it's not lila. So Prabhu always warns us also, because we might think, yeah, it's my lila, It's my lila. I've decided to do my lila of, falling in Maya and trying out some intoxication, going to some festivals, trying out some drugs, That's not lila. All the different manifestations of the Lord, His different forms and shapes and pastimes, and sometimes maybe, even confusing things He might do, they're all certainly lila, and we can understand them as being absolute. When the Lord does something gracious, like Nrsimhadev protecting Prahlad, or the same Nrsimhadev, drilling his nails, into the stone chest of Hiranyakashipu and ripping him apart, it's both transcendental and good. There's no difference. The benefit, of being touched by the Lord is equally good. When we do something good or bad, it has direct consequences. Dire consequences also very often. Wurde diese Matte schon benutzt zum Draufstehen? Achso, die Schalen. Ja, trotzdem, das ist ein Eimer von der Küche. Also, wenn jemand schon draufgestanden ist auf die Matte, vielleicht nicht so ideal. So, yes, so we should not confuse, our journey with or our exploits, our adventures, with the adventures of the Lord. Very, very different. And therefore, also we should not. This is also one of the fallacies, of impersonal interpretations, that any activity is Maya. No. Our activities are Maya, under the influence of Maya. We are confused. We don't know who we really are, because the word Maya can be interpreted as meaning illusion in the literal sense that it's non-existent, or in a better sense, Maya means that which is not. So we perceive something as something else what it really is. For example, when you see a Fata Morgana in the desert, you see, beautiful palm trees and juicy fruits and a lake of water, and you run and jump and you swallow sand. So you thought it's water, but actually it's sand. So that's the illusion. The illusion is that we think that through this material blunt senses, we will be able to actually satisfy the self. We think that these senses can satisfy the self. But the self is beyond material reality. The self is transcendent. The self is Satchidananda. So it can never be satisfied through material sensory experience. It's a mismatch. You can try as hard as you want. Get as much as recognition or money or power or influence or adoration or sensual, experiences. It will never please the self, because the self is spiritual. The soul is spiritual. So this is the difference. There's a strong difference between our embodied presence and the embodied presence of the Lord. The Lord's body is non-different than His self. So when He does something, it's Him really doing it. When we do something, it's actually the modes of nature, pushing us to do something. So therefore, we are not really free. We are very predictable. We're very predictable. We're not free. The Lord is Swarat. He's independent. Nothing is really dictated to Him. But we are very much dictated. We have to sleep, we have to eat, we have to go to the toilet, otherwise, we die. You don't eat, you don't go to the toilet, you die. So, like that. So, and we'll finish now by shortly talking about Bahulastami. Today is Bahulastami, a very special festival, the appearance of Radhakunda. So Bahulastami is actually the appearance of Radhakunda 500 years ago, or reappearance, or rediscovery, of Radhakund by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So I heard from one very learned lady that the appearance of Radhakund in the times of Krishna, this is after the killing of Arishtasura. Krishna kills Arishtasura, who's a bull, a bull demon, in the form of a bull. And because he killed a bull, the gopis play a game on Krishna, and tell him, we do not want your association anymore because you killed a bull. You are sinful. You killed the symbol of Dharma, So you have to take bath in all the holy rivers. Only then we might consider taking your association again. So, and they were very strict about it. So Krishna by his mystic power, Yoga Maya, allowed at that point for him to forget his, position as Braja Mohan, and he manifested his full power. He summoned, I heard, 60,000 or 68,000 holy rivers, all the holy rivers from the universe, came, and I forgot if he used a stick or something, but he made this, pond, and all these rivers entered into that pond, thousands of rivers, in their personal forms. They offer obeisances to the Lord, and then entered in the form of water into the Shyamakund. So he took bath, was free from his sins, and now it was Krishna's turn to blame the gopis. So he said, I am pure now, but I don't want your association now, because you sided with the demon. You sided with the demon, accusing me of killing a demon. So therefore you need to be purified as well now. And then it says the gopis then started, also digging a well with their bracelets, it says. And then they started bringing water also from Manasi Ganga or from Kushum Sarovar, I forgot. And at one point also the holy rivers request Radharani to allow them to also enter into her pond, and that's how Radhakund and Shyamakund appear. And this Leela occurred, according to this scholarly lady, devotee, in springtime. So, but in Kartik, what we are celebrating now today, Bahulastami, is when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu rediscovered Vrindavan. So he rediscovered Vrindavan 500 years ago. He sent, of course, also the 6 Goswamis to complete this task and locate all the holy places, of which there are thousands and millions, and according to Shivaram Swami, billions, of different holy places in Vrindavan. And but one of the places that he himself directly discovered was Radhakund and Shyamakund. At that point he was looking for this, specifically asking for Radhakund and Shyamakund. And some local people were saying there is this, I forgot the name, how do they call it? I think they call it Kali, Kali and Gauri, like the black and the bright pond, some small, in the middle of a rice field, some kind of small pond or patch of water. And then when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu approached this, then all the symptoms of ecstatic love manifested in his body, and he declared, this is Radhakund, and this is Shyamakund. So then his disciples, the 6 Goswamis, I'm not sure now if Sanatan Goswami, somebody knows which Goswami developed Radhakund? Raghunath Das Goswami was Samadhi there. Unfortunately, I forgot. But one of the Goswamis developed the Radhakund, built a proper, excavated it and built temples and ghats, places steps to enter the water, etc. Developed the whole area. And you will see that Shyamakund and Radhakund are not the same shape. The Radhakund is very, a nice square, but the Shyamakund is very oddly shaped. And the reason is because it is said that, of course, all the trees in Vrindavan are considered to be kalpavrikshas, wish-fulfilling, trees. And some of the trees that were next to the Shyamakund, they revealed themselves to be the 5 Pandavas who were residing there in the form of trees. So they built the Shyamakund in such a way to not cut those trees. That's why the Shyamakund is a little bit, crooked and not straight. And those trees have now, in the meantime, most of them has vanished. Only one is left. And now it says all the 5 Pandavas are now present in that one last tree. So, yes, Radhakund, Shyamakund, it's certainly considered to be the most holy place, in the world, in the universe, in existence. And we were talking about Vrindavan, Mathura, Dwarka, Ayodhya, etc. So in a similar way, in the Nectar of Instruction, there is explanation, of how, which one is the most sublime and supreme transcendental, abode. So we can understand that, Vaikuntha is the spiritual reality in general. So a place where there is no fear. Whereas this world, the material reality, is called as Kuntaloka or Mrityuloka. There's death and there's fear. Certainly, you can see it. Everybody has some fears. In animals, it's very obvious. They eat and then they look. They eat and then they look. Always on guard. And spiritual advancement. One of the ways to measure spiritual advancement is when somebody is truly free of fear. This was also one of the responses Srila Prabhupada gave when he was asked, "What is the effect of chanting Hare Krishna?" I said, "You will become free of fear." Truly free of fear. Or similar, like here, Lord Shiva is also saying that he is not at all concerned about what people do to him. If they blaspheme him, or criticize him, he's aloof, aloof to that, because he's fixed in his internal spiritual realization. So in a very similar way, when we have spiritual realization, we are free of fear. That's Vaikuntha. And then within Vaikuntha, we have Ayodhya Dham, which is much more elevated. It's much more personal. Because in Vaikuntha Loka, Narayana is the king or the predominator of one entire loka or planet. Whereas in Ayodhya Dham, it's just one city, and he's the king. Then in Dwarkadish, he's not the king, but he is the most famous citizen of that city. And everybody understands that he's the super soul, and a friend. And in Mathura, he becomes more intimate. And then Nectar of Instruction describes, that from all the holy places, from all the, you could say, locations in the spiritual reality, Vrindavan, Goloka Vrindavan is the highest. And within Vrindavan, Govardhan Hill is the highest. And on the feet of Govardhan is the highest of them all, Radhakund. Radhakund, Shyamakund. So therefore, in our tradition, we consider the Radhakund to be the most holy place. And there's an interesting controversy, because in the Nectar of Instruction, Srila Prabhupada clearly says that we should all take bath in Radhakund. And we should even go there and recite and live in Radhakund. But during his lifetime, he actually forbade his disciples to take bath in Radhakund. So the question is why? Because this is a very holy place, and one should not think this is like a swimming pool, and and maybe do some salto, go on a roof and then jump into the lake. So some of the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, when they came the first time to Radhakund, they thought, "Oh, nice pool," So they jumped in and they were, splashing water and just playing around, without proper understanding and respect. So therefore, Prabhupada restricted, the bathing in the Radhakund. But of course, the eternal instruction is in the Nectar of Instruction. We should take bath, with great respect. And there's a science to it also. I forgot exactly the detail, but you should take bath in Radhakund, then in Shyamakund, then again in Radhakund, then again in Shyamakund, then Radhakund, something like that. If you go to Radhakund, you find somebody who is local and who is expert, and they will tell you how to take a bath. But their two lakes are next to each other. They're also connected. And especially if you perform Govardhan Parikrama around Govardhan, and then the culmination of the Govardhan Parikrama, if you have been chanting, for many hours, maybe 5-6 hours, depending how fast you walk, then to take shelter in Radhakund is extremely beneficial. And of course, especially on this day, actually, on Bahulastami and Hari Bhakti Vilas and Padma Purana, there are descriptions and encouragement that especially on this day, if one takes a bath in Radhakund, one will attain the highest perfection. So on this day, in Radhakund, there are literally hundreds and thousands of people, trying to get a bath, at midnight in Radhakund. I only was around that time there, and I know some devotees who were in the middle of it, and it can be scary, because such huge masses of people, all frantic and enthusiastic to take bath, at the midnight hour in Radhakund. So that's the day. Bahulastami, the day Chaitanya Mahaprabhu rediscovered and remanifested Radhakund for us. So in this degraded age of Kali, we might be able to take shelter of this unique place. And materially speaking, you might think, some weird, old, poor village in India, dirty, but if you have understanding, spiritual knowledge, it's the most unique place actually we can visit. So that's it. Maybe there's some questions or comments somebody might want to add. Julian.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. My question is regarding the rediscovery of Vrindavan and Radhakund. So do I understand it correctly that before that nobody really knew where Radhakund and Shyamakund is, or even Vrindavan?
So Mathura was there. Mathura is a very ancient city. And Mathura, like if you go to India nowadays, people think that the architecture you will find nowadays in Vrindavan or Mathura, that this is how India looked 5,000 years ago. That's a mistake. Many artists also make. They depict the Leelas of Krishna in this pointed archways, like you find nowadays in Vrindavan. But this is actually relatively recent. You could say maybe 300-400 years maybe. But Mathura is much more ancient. You can go, there's a museum in Mathura, and you will find very ancient pillars and deities. Even in Berlin, if you ever go to Berlin, there is the Bode Museum, not a Bode Museum. Now I think it's in the main palace in the city now. But there's a whole collection of items from India. The German explorers collected a lot, and there's many deities from Mathura, in Berlin. Big Sankarsana, Vasudev, deities, very, very beautiful. Also Krishna holding the chakra like this, very really cool deities. And there you can get an idea how ancient actually Mathura is. But even Mathura, I think 2,000 years ago or so, was controlled by the Kushans also. So at different times, Mathura was the capital of big empires. And we know that Brajanaba, 5,000 years ago, shortly after Krishna, installed many deities, in the whole area of Braja, Vrindavan, Mathura. And some of those deities are in Mathura itself, but many of the other deities were lost. And so yeah, in short, you could say Mathura was always known as a city, and it went through different eras where it was, capital of different empires, and then it was completely destroyed many times, and rebuilt. So nowadays there's a big mosque, on the place of where Krishna was born, for example. In the Krishna Janmastan, and the big barbed wires and military, and there's this new temple right next to it. Similar to the place like the birthplace of Ayodhya, of Ram. Also, it's occupied. And so you could say, if you look at the city of Mathura, you can understand what kind of devastation and change happened over so many thousands of years. So the surrounding areas, surrounding areas of Braj, and more specifically Vrindavan, which is not too far, maybe like 10 kilometers from Mathura, it was jungle. It had become jungle, and was very lawless also. Even at the times of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, and even nowadays, the area of like Mathura, Uttar Pradesh, near Agra, it's known for all the gundas, big mafias. They're taking the sand from the river and doing all kinds of illegal things. Illegal mining, and at that time it was very, very, like you could say, infested, with all kinds of criminals. And one of the very famous, descriptions of the 6 Goswamis is that they're dhira adhira, how's it go? Dhira priyo. So they were dear to the dhira and adhira, both like the Goswamis. So when the Goswamis settled there were basically, some villagers and many dacoits, who were hiding there, But the six Goswamis had such a unique spiritual character and effulgence, or they were attractive to both, to the saintly people and also to the gundas. So they also took shelter of the Goswamis and even asked them for advice, So that's how they were able to establish Vrindavan again, actually. And of course, there's so many stories. Basically, for each of the main deities, there's a story of how they were rediscovered. Many of the main deities of Brajanava were rediscovered by Advaitacharya. Advaitacharya rediscovered Madan Mohan, and of course Rupa Goswami rediscovered Govindaji, and Madhu Pandit rediscovered Vara Gopinath or Gopinath, and so on and so forth. So yes, so as far as I understand, so Mathura was always known, it was always a populated city, but all the Leela stands, specifically of Vrindavan, and of course Braj Mandal is very big actually, it goes, like today morning I was hearing from Najuna Maharaj that Shivaram Swami calculated from many different sources of the Acharyas, there are billions of holy places in Vrindavan, so a few have been manifested again. The most important ones, the most important Leela stands were manifested by the Goswamis. We are confident that they had the, you could say, spiritual connection and empowerment to perceive directly, what happened at these different places, Even 500 years ago, it was all just jungle, And unfortunately, it didn't last too long, you could say, the golden age of the revival of Vrindavan, more or less 150, 200 years, and then Aurangzeb came and destroyed it all again, to a great extent, And then there was again smaller revivals, and of course, in many ways, when Srila Prabhupada returned to Vrindavan in 1972, this was the global revival of Vrindavan, and the residents of Vrindavan were very because at that time, very, very few people actually knew Vrindavan in India even, only some scholars or really devoted Vaishnavas, they knew there is Mathura Vrindavan, somewhere there, in North India. But very few people visited actually, Vrindavan. And when Srila Prabhupada came with his disciples in 1972, the whole village of Vrindavan was like, wow, people from all over the world are coming now to Vrindavan. And they gave Prabhupada a heroic welcome. They renamed the main road of Vrindavan, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Marg, It's still there, the name is Bhaktivedanta Swami Marg in front of Krishna Balaram Mandir, the main access road to Vrindavan. And since then, of course, Vrindavan now, of course, on the flip side of Kali Yuga, of course, the beautiful sand Parikrama Marg has become full of concrete and trucks, and it's become a huge city actually nowadays. The first time I was in Vrindavan was 2003, I think. And 2003, Vrindavan was still very different, You could do the whole parikrama around Vrindavan, and most of it was still sand, just sandbanks, And 3 years later, they already put concrete. 3 years later, in 2009, they put billboards everywhere, and then it's going faster and faster, Now huge high-risers, and now they have a huge parking, like the car park outside of, the main town of Vrindavan, because so many cars are coming. So it is said that the glories of Vrindavan will actually reduce, and the glories of Mayapur will increase. So even Vrindavan is becoming more like a city. You could say the pristine nature of Vrindavan is, disappearing, more and more. But of course, there are still, if you do Mandal Parikram, like now Najuna Maharaj is leading the Mandal Parikram in different parts, different holy places in Vrindavan. There's still, in the greater Braj Mandal area, there are still many kunjas, and holy places, forests, where you can get an idea how Vrindavan was in the past. Yeah. Yes. Yes, it's better.
Hare Krishna, Govinda Prabhu, for such a wonderful class. I will ask my question through a comparison. For example, I remember in Krishna Valley, they also had like 600 or something holy places. And although these are not literally the places, for example, Krishna and Radha go at this particular time, or this is not the literal Naimisharanya forest, it's understood that this is where Radha Shyama Sundar perform their pastimes actually, and they are present. And the leelas are happening there. In a similar way, for example, is the Radha Kund and Shyama Kund are also in this way present in the place that we know them? Like, are they literally the place that these pastimes happened, or are they places where these pastimes are somehow still happening?
Good question. So there is this very famous saying that wherever there is a pure devotee or a congregation of devotees, the next hill becomes Govardhan, and the next river becomes Yamuna, and the next forest becomes Vrindavan. So there's a very famous saying like that. Because of course, ultimately these are, Vrindavan you could say is not a place, it's a state of consciousness. This is true that Vrindavan can be manifested anywhere. Like Srila Prabhupada said, like the temple of Vishnu is the embassy of the spiritual world. It's an embassy of Vaikuntha. And of course, if we worship Radha Krishna, it might become Vrindavan. And that's why we also call our hill here Govardhan. It's our Govardhan hill. There's some rocks there. And we haven't established Radha Kund and Shyama Kund yet. But this is true. At the same time, there is you could say, eternal embassy of the Dham in this material world, where the Bhauma Leela means the Prakrit, the manifested pastimes of the Lord take place. And this is in Vrindavan. And these are the actual places where the Leela takes place. And we hear in the Bhagavatam that there's the Dhama. These are places that are never destroyed. So Navadvip, Vrindavan, Bararik Ashram, there's a few holy places. These are dhamas. So dhamas, they're considered like islands. And when there is the partial dissolution of the universe, these places actually remain. There are many descriptions like that. Navadvip especially, there's very elaborate descriptions how when there is the dissolution of at the end of the day of Brahma and everything is inundated, Navadvipa remains. And similar for Vrindavan. So this is the Bhauma Leela. It's the actual place where those Leelas took place. But at the same time, there is a warning, that if you go to a holy place like Vrindavan or Navadvip, and your state of consciousness is not right, and you only go there to dump your sins, then you're not really in Vrindavan, Then it says you're like an ass, like a donkey, They also go take bath, they have no benefits, So the real benefit is when we go to such a holy place and we hear about the glories of such a holy place from pure souls, from pure devotees, then we have the real benefit. So you could say that to establish, like Shivaram Maharaj, they took a map of Vrindavan and they superimposed it on the land they have, and then they marked, all these holy places, the main holy places and then the smaller holy places. So just to emphasize that, by the right conduct and consciousness, we can manifest Vrindavan in our lives. Prabhupada wanted to, like the Goswamis, they were absorbed, just by the meditation they were in Vrindavan. So you could say it takes an external effort, a conscious effort to manifest, these places, in a new place, like an embassy. Like you can have an embassy of Germany in Afghanistan, in Kenya, everywhere. In a similar way, you can have, or like in Germany, you could say we have the main embassy of India in Berlin, and then there are many consulates in Munich, and Frankfurt, and Hamburg. So in a similar way, you could say the main embassy of the spiritual world of Vrindavan is in Uttar Pradesh, Brajadam, Braj Mandala. And then you could say the temples that we have are like consulates, subordinate. They're not the same, because when you go to Vrindavan, you will see the effort that you need to be Krishna conscious is much less. If you have the slightly right attitude, you can make so much progress within a very short time, because these are Leela stanzas where Krishna directly walked. Raman Reti is the sand where Krishna and Balaram sported. So, and the trees are still there that Krishna touched. Trees can live very long lives, and there are trees in Vrindavan that are 5,000 years or older. They were present when Krishna was present. These trees heard the flute of Krishna. So it's a very unique place. We should not, even it's like in the spiritual plane, everything is transcendental, and we should not judge or make something less or as less or better. But at the same time, you could actually say that something is better and better and better. It doesn't mean that's like Vrajadam in Hungary is less valuable, but certainly Vrindavan in Mathura is more valuable. It doesn't make sense, but it makes sense maybe. Okay?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for these teachings. I have a question about Sarvabhauma Acharya.
Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, yeah.
You mentioned at the beginning. He was an impersonalist? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
He was the greatest scholar of Vedanta at that time in India. And he became a devotee.
And he was teaching Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu what again?
So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu arrived in Jagannath Puri, he was just a fresh sannyasi, a young sannyasi. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had taken the sannyas order from Keshava Bharati, I think. No? Keshava Bharata? I think so. Anyway, he took the sannyas order in an impersonal tradition, because this was the recognized order of sannyasis at that time. Okay. So sometimes we think that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was running around with tilak and a sika, but actually he took sannyas from this order. So he certainly had no sika, and he was carrying the ekadanda. So like a sannyasi, but actually they broke the ekadanda. Nityananda didn't like it, so he broke his danda on the way to Puri. It's a funny story. But he looked like a like a sannyasi, like a Mayavadi sannyasi. But of course very effulgent and very beautiful, and Sarvabhauma was so attracted to him. And he actually rescued him because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu fell unconscious. When he entered the temple, he fell unconscious, in ecstasy. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya took him to his home. He was naturally attracted, to his beauty and his effulgence. He took him to his home, and when he came back to consciousness, he said, "You're so young, 24 years old. You live very dangerously. You're so attractive. You're so beautiful. How could you manage to remain a sannyasi? I think I want to help you, and I will teach you Vedanta Sutra." So the Vedanta Sutra is the summary of all the Vedas. And the Mayavadi sannyasis, especially Shankara, strongly promoted the study of the Vedanta Sutra. Even, of course, also the Vaishnava Acharyas have commentaries on Vedanta Sutra. Sri Bhasya from Ramanujacharya, and then there's also commentary by Madhvacharya, and all the main traditions have a commentary. Only in our tradition, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, the natural commentary on Vedanta Sutra is the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. It begins with the same line, Janmad Yasya Yatha. So, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was, had to protect like a father. He wanted to protect this young, beautiful sannyasi. He said, he's living a dangerous life. I have to give him a lot of input from the Shastras so he becomes protected, And he explained all the Vedanta Sutras, the summary of the Vedas. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, like I said, he then said, your explanations are like clouds. And then he started explaining the Vedanta Sutra. And then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya became a devotee. Yes. Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Okay, one more. Yes, last.
So in Padma Purana it is stated that it's very it's very good to take bath in Radhakund during Bahulashtami.
Yes.
But Padma Purana was written far before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu discovered Radhakund, and at that time Bahulashtami doesn't have anything in common with Radhakund, so how is that?
Again. I didn't understand the question.
So in Padma Purana it is stated that it's very fortunate those who can take bath in Radhakund.
In Bahulastami, yes.
But at that time when Padma Purana was written, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't discover Radhakund.
So we tend to have a very linear idea of history. You know, that means this happened before, this happened after. So how is it possible? You know, you will encounter this a few times. But of course, in reality, the ultimate point is that Radhakund is an eternal location. Radhakund is eternal in the spiritual world. And that is these beautiful descriptions. Radha and Krishna have at noontime, they go to Radhakund. There's this beautiful big swing of flowers, and they swing over the lake. You know? Very amazing pastime. So Radhakund is an eternal place. And it appeared 5,000 years ago as part of the Krishna Lila already. And it reappeared, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was there. So Bahulastami, you could say, it's a day in the calendar eternally. And Radhakund is also an eternal place. So how accessible that place was, that's the only thing that changed. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made it more accessible. But sometimes holy places are hidden. And maybe some lucky farmer, who was doing his fields and was taking bath on that day, there are stories like this also, In Bahulastami, the farmer, before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you can make a hypothetical story, There must be, because it was rice fields, so the farmers were taking bath maybe in that area on the right day, so they had the benefit, It was just not developed or marked, Radhakund, but it was there. The spring was there, the water was there. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just emphasized its location. I forgot the name. Today morning I heard the name, but it was something called like Kaligat or Kali and Gauri, as a Gauri and Kali. The Gauri Kund and the Kali Kund. And then he renamed it Shyamakund, Radhakund. Okay? Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Too late. Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai.